you pull the jumper on and you know, you're out in the field, you're one of 18 and you look after each other, and that never changes. I mean, if someone's in a different jumper, you know, it's open slather, but once they're in that Carlton jumper and you're alongside them, you look after them like you would any other teammates. G'day, David Rhys-Jones here, 182 games of footy with South Melbourne, the Swans, and also at Carlton, premiership player in 1987, and I'm on Sports Legends with Bevo.
Well, what a pleasure it is to have a man who's played 182 games of footy for South Melbourne and also the Carlton Blues, premiership player back in 1987, and also a Norm Smith medalist on that same day. So David Rhys-Jones, welcome to Sports Legends with Bevo.
Yeah, great to be here, and nice sunny day over here in Melbourne, so all good.
Looking forward to a big Easter as well. You were just saying before, 11 days off, you lucky bugger.
Yeah, I've got Good Friday off to Anzac Day, so head up to Sydney and see my daughter and my grandkids up there, so looking forward to that, and looking forward to just a bit of a break.
Well, speaking of kids, your young lad Cooper, he's got Prader-Willi Syndrome. And it's going to lead us to our very first segment, Rhys, which is when the going gets tough, the tough gets winning. For those people out there that don't know what Prader-Willi Syndrome is, tell us a bit more about it and what young Cooper's going through and perhaps how people can help donate.
Oh, yeah, look, it's a pretty complex sort of condition he's got. It's a genetic condition. He's basically missing part of a chromosome, which is what blends us all together. And, he has these issues learning and, developing sort of thing. But I think where most people have heard of this condition is that these kids have got an insatiable appetite. Basically, the connection between the brain and the stomach doesn't compute, so they're hungry all the time. And so they, it was called a starvation syndrome for a while there, and that's basically how they are. They live from meal to meal basically, and creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of other issues. But he you can go through a myriad of things from skin picking to just his general demeanour at times, and he can get pretty well stuck on things and hard to get him out of doing something that he's stuck on at the time. So, it's a challenging condition, but he's doing okay.
Oh, that's good to hear. So health-wise, he's actually all right at the moment?
Yeah, he is. And what happened, I mean, obviously, when he was first born, you Google things and you look at, the life expectancy of these kids was around about 27, and that was 18 years ago. So, and most of them, that's due to eating too much, basically, and the obesity and the conditions that can come along with that. So, but we've kept him in pretty good nick, and, growth hormone's been available to us since he was about 3 or 4, which has been a bonus too, because it's allowed him to grow at a normal sort of rate. And we're pretty conscious of, his diet and everything, and he's ticking along okay, but it's a 24-hour situation. We have locks on cupboards and fridges and freezers and that sort of thing, so he can't can't get to food, because he'd eat a lot if he had an opportunity to.
And how can people sort of help support such an important cause?
Oh, look, we've got our fundraiser coming up in May, and from the 15th of May, so anyone can. I've got a Facebook page that'll be up and going, which will be directing people to, we've got a 15 for 15 challenge. And last year I interviewed 15 celebrities, which was pretty difficult actually because of the COVID situation. And I'll do that again this year and just get different people, but mainly ex-footballers on board, and, just to help us and raise a few bucks, but get onto Facebook and look up David Rhys-Jones. And I've got a public page on there, which will, people can donate through.
We'll certainly give that a big share for you for sure.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah. Every bit helps, and a lot of the funds raised go to trying to look into the condition and helping the kids have a reasonably normal life. Yeah,
that's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that he's going well. Now let's go back to where it all started with your footy career now, Rhys. This next segment is called Where It All Began. Back to when you started playing your junior footy and then into playing as a 17-year-old for South Melbourne, making your debut, and then obviously going on to play for the Blues. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, look, I played most of my junior football at a club called Oakley Youth Club, which wasn't a very successful club, but they were good times down there. There were 2 years we couldn't field a team, so I went and played with Oakley, who were the VFA in under-15s. And my last year, we couldn't form an under-17 team, so I had a few mates who were playing at a club called Oakley Districts in the old Federal League days. And, so I went over there and played under-18s and did all right that year and won the best and fairest in the competition as an underage player. And, I was picked up by South Melbourne from there and played a match at the end of that year. They had a Kazali competition, which I think they had 4 different areas: Wagga, western suburbs, eastern suburbs, and I don't know, somewhere else around the place. And, so the 4 teams actually got together and had matches out at Waverley Park. And I did okay there and sort of just went from there. I got invited down to the under-19s. Probably only trained a couple of times the under-19s, and they asked me to come up and play in a scratch match senior with the seniors, and I did okay in that. Found my way in pretty quickly, really. Ian Stewart was a bit of a rap for me, so he gave me, some opportunities, and I played the first 5 games of 1980 in the reserves and it was going okay, and obviously got an opportunity after that to play senior footy, and unfortunately broke my leg in my 4th game, but the first was a bit of a highlight. It's funny, Stewie was very protective of me. He only let me on at half time. He said, "We're not going to play until half time in my first game." So, I come on, kicked a couple of goals and did okay. And, sort of a bit of a springboard for that. But unfortunately, as I said, broke my leg in my 4th game, so I missed the rest of that year.
And then went on to obviously have a stellar career at the Blues as well, winning the flag in 1987.
Yeah, obviously that's the highlight. That's why you play football. It's, to play in premierships. And, one of the reasons I left, I picked Carlton as a club after I left the Swans was because, I wasn't going to, it doesn't matter, the money and those sort of things are handy, but you want to play in successful teams. And, Carlton had been down for a couple of years there after winning 81 and 82. At the end of 84, I thought that they were a club that was going to bounce back, and luckily they did too, and we're able to get there in 87.
And now let's talk about something that you're not so proud of, and that takes us to our next segment, which is called the Taste of Regret. Now, you've quite openly come out and said that you're not proud of the fact that you got reported 25 times. And obviously, as we clearly see today, you're a great bloke off the field and known that way. But on the field, you're known as a bit of a tough sort of fella. And but you sort of say as well that it wasn't a case of you starting the fights. It was more of a case of you being a retaliator. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, a lot of times you get caught retaliating. And, back in those days, it was probably a tougher game now, and you had to have your wits about you, and guys would be behind the play, they'd be pinching you, they'd be wrestling with you and different stuff, and trying to put you off your game. And back in those days, if you had a chink in your armour, I suppose it got exploited. So and my chink, I think, was coaches thought that they could put blokes out there who could niggle me, and I'd be put off my game, and on occasions it did happen.
And speaking of crazy things and big fights, back in 1987, 2 weeks after you'd won the premiership with the Blues, you went over and played in what was called the Battle of Britain, and it was a game between yourself and the Blues and also the Kangaroos, and you were told to target Alistair Clarkson from what I heard as well, and this ended up being just an absolute game just full of fights, spot fires everywhere. Tell us about this game and how it all started.
Well, obviously we won the premiership, and we're still, this is a couple of weeks later, and we're still basically celebrating. And North Melbourne got bundled out of the finals. I think Melbourne beat them in the first week of the finals by over 100 points. And John Kennedy was their coach at the time, and he got them together, and he trained them pretty hard right through the final series leading into the game over in London. And the silly thing was he told them not to associate with us before the game, and he wanted to see who had that shin bone of spirit and who was going to be part of the North Melbourne Footy Club and the next year. And so they come out, they took the game pretty seriously. And to be perfectly honest, we didn't even, I think there was only one person in the Carlton Footy Club who wanted to win that game, and that was John Elliott, because I think he wanted to present himself with a Foster's Cup that we're actually playing for. But Yeah, but if you won that game, you had to go and play a final. There was games played, around the world. Vancouver, I think it was Geelong, and someone might have played in Vancouver. But if you played in the first match and you won it, you had to play in another match, which was going to be in LA, but they had an earthquake that year, switched it up to Canada. And played the final up there, but we didn't want to. One game was going to be enough for us, and the good thing was if you lost the game, you went over to Los Angeles and basically had a week on the AFL. So that was more appealing than playing another game of footy. They come out and they went hard at us, and we're sort of thinking, what's bloody going on here? It's an exhibition game. It's not. We're not playing for sheep stations, but obviously a few of their players were playing for sheep stations, and it got right out of hand, and it wasn't a great advertisement for AFL footy, but they started and we finished it.
Yeah, well, it's certainly some good viewing there. Watch that on YouTube. Battle of Britain, Google it, I suggest. Going back to your footy career again, back in the days when you were playing for the Blues and he was playing for the Sydney Swans, that was Greg Diesel-Williams, of course, a champion footballer that went on to win a Brownlow medal. This moves us on to our next segment, which is called What Were You Thinking? Greg broke your jaw and then ended up being a teammate of yours. What was your reaction like when you rocked up to the club one day and you realised that you'd be playing with a guy that you didn't really like?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I sort of, you sort of have it in the back of your mind, I owed him one. He broke my jaw in two places. And when they joined the club, you sort of think, geez, how am I going to get him now? I'll have to run him over in the car park or something. But, I could do this, but... look, he was a great footballer and won a couple of Brownlows and premiership player and Norm Smith medalist in 95. So, look, he had a magnificent career, but he was a dirty bugger on the field. And, I wish I'd have squared up, but anyway, I didn't.
And your relationship with him at Carlton, obviously being teammates, and we all sort of play with teammates that we might not necessarily get along with or you can't get along with everyone at the end of the day. So it's always, that's the case with, 22 players and big squads that you have with footy. What was it like though, having him as a teammate? And, would it have been pretty tough though, trying to put aside that dislike for him and have him as a teammate?
No, as you said, I mean, you pull a jumper on and you're out in the field, you're one of 18 and you look after each other, and that never changes. I mean, if someone's in a different jumper, it's open slather, but once they're in that Carlton jumper and you're alongside them, you look after them like you would any other teammate. Yeah, and look, to be perfectly honest, I was at the end of my career. It was my last year, 92, when Greg arrived, and I'd come over some pretty horrific knee problems. So I think I probably only played about 8 or 9, mainly the last few games of the year, and finished on a high. I mean, I was playing senior footy when I was able to retire, and I retired of my own volition. So, it all worked out okay.
Did he apologise for breaking your jaw?
No. Well, he seems to think that his shoulder, I broke his shoulder before that. But I went into the match with a sore shoulder, and I actually went into the match with a jaw that was intact. So I don't see where I'm from, but yeah. So we both got different versions of what actually happened that day.
Yeah, and like you said, that's just footy, isn't it? So.
Yeah, exactly. It stays on the field, and if you have the opportunity, you can square up. But unfortunately, I didn't get that opportunity.
And let's go back to 1987, the day that you famously won the Norm Smith and won your first premiership with Carlton. This takes us to our next segment, which is called Getting Out of Your Comfort Zone. You were actually given a pretty tough task of playing on one of the game's greats in Dermot Brereton, after you'd actually been a wingman your whole career before that. So when you were given that task of playing centre-half back, what was your reaction like, firstly, when you were told that? And must be a pretty amazing feeling knowing that you won a Norm Smith playing on one of the best players of all time.
I'd played a little bit in the back line during that year and played a bit forward as well and kicked a few goals in a few matches. So I was, prepared to play anywhere really that coach had put me. But I walked in. I can't say I was, obviously I was a bit surprised. We just trained as normal on a Thursday. went into our room and the team was up on the board and I just saw, centre half back against Dermot Burton, and I think about another 19 sets of eyes all went to me sort of thing. And because John Dorothy had normally picked up Dermot and done a reasonably good job on him over the time. Wolsey wanted to change it up and thought I could do the job. And I've always had confidence in my own ability to go out and play on anyone. And, I just tried to bring the ball to the ground as much as I could. Dermot obviously is going to be more superior in the air and a lot stronger than I was. So, I'd be playing my attack of working off him and bringing the ball to the deck, which worked out well. I mean, it was about 34 degrees that day and it was a hot day, so I wasn't too keen on getting into any fights or wrestling with him or anything. And yeah, it just sort of all panned out pretty well.
Now, this next segment, Rhys, is called Makes Me Smile. Let's go back through your career highlights, and obviously 1987 would be one of those, but what other sort of things that happened throughout your footy career with the 182 games with South Melbourne and the Blues really made you smile?
Yeah, look, with South Melbourne, we weren't a great team, but we won the night premiership, I think it was in, I don't have to get the year right now, I think it was 82 or 83, won the night premiership against North Melbourne, who had a star-studded team. So that was a highlight. Any time you have any sort of success, obviously your first game's always a great memory too. And, I had a lot of injuries, throughout my career after breaking my leg in my fourth game. Over 13 years, I missed a hell of a lot of footy and missed around about a season. I think 22 weeks with suspensions as well. So I sat on the boundary for a lot of it. When I was able to get out there, I think I acquitted myself reasonably well. And there's always great memories.
And this next segment is called Words of Wisdom. What was the best piece of advice that you ever received from one of your coaches? Who was the coach and why was that advice, so good?
Well, the coaches weren't. It's funny, I coached. I went down to North Launceston and coached when I finished my career, and I had a bloke down there called Todd Spearman, who's a terrific footballer and that, but just a bit of a wild cat and off the field and on the field a little bit. And I reckon I was almost tempted after about 3 or 4 months to just ring my coaches that I had at AFL over the time and apologise. I'm terribly sorry for all the angst I would have put you through, but I was experiencing it myself. So, it's just one of those things. But one of the, and it didn't come from a coach, it came from a book I read once, and I remember I got stirred about it a little bit by the boys down there, but The Man in the Mirror. There's a little poem sort of thing about a man in the mirror, and the bloke you're looking at in the mirror, well, I'm looking at myself now, he's the only one who can really help you along. And he's the person who you've got to look at the end of the day and determine whether you've satisfied that bloke in the mirror or not. Yeah, so it was a good little poem, and that sort of resonated with me and, made me think more about being able to keep yourself satisfied in the performance yourself, because you're the one who knows whether you put in or tried your best or whatever, however it occurred, whatever happened.
And who was your funniest teammates at the clubs and why?
Look, I sort of knocked around with guys like Jimmy Buckley and Wayne Johnson, and we liked to beer, we liked to bet, a lot of those off-field activities that we enjoyed doing together, and often have a sneaky look at the scoreboard to see what horses have won the races and make sure our quaddie and that was coming in. The runner normally had information, so on how we're going with our quaddies and different things during the course of a game. When you play on Saturday, you have to keep on track with those sort of things as well.
That's brilliant. And one final one, you played on some absolute superstars. I mentioned before Dermy, you played on Gary Ablett Senior. Who was your toughest opponent and why?
It's funny, I mean, you go back to when I was playing on a wing, and a bloke called Wayne Schimmelbusch was probably the hardest bloke I ever played on, because he just didn't stop. He went 100 miles an hour from the first bounce, and he was still pushing himself right to the final siren. And just for that, I think, he was the hardest bloke to play on, because he just gave it his all in every game he played and just, didn't stop. He didn't let up. And like the Energizer Bunny sort of thing, he just kept going. And Yeah, he was a ripper, great player of his time as well, and captain of great clubs. So, he was probably one of the tougher ones. But look, anyone who plays league footy, and especially back in those days, you had to earn your place. You really did have to earn your place, and it was tough footy. You had to put your nose over it and be prepared to cop whatever come your way. So, I tip me out to anyone who gets out there and makes it in the big time.
No, well said. Well, Rhys-Jones, thanks so much for joining us today on Sports Legends with Bevo, mates, and giving up your time. I'll make sure we give a big shout out as well and share the David Rhys-Jones Facebook page and the charity event that's happening in May. Wish you all the very best with that, and good to hear that Cooper's going well.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bevo. Glad to be a part of this.